The whole trade deal with the U.S., how they didn't meet they didn't even meet
It was like 60%.
less than 60% of their targets of buying U.S. exports
It's
to
not
China.
so much a target as it is a promise.
That they didn't keep. Well, they were like, well, it's not our fault. It was the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And, who could have done anything about that?
Yeah.
Who could have / should have known in January 2020 when China's trade representative signed the deal that there was a deadly virus? Oh, wait, China already knew exactly what was happening inside China.
Yeah, I mean, I will give them December. I believe that most of December, the Wuhan officials were trying to keep it under wraps because they were going to get in trouble. But by January, there's definitely evidence that Xi Jinping knew very early on what was going on.
Like it went from a local government cover-up to a central government cover-up.
Yep. Until the point when they couldn't do it anymore. But that didn't matter because then they had the WHO in their pocket.
Yeah. Oh, and also, I found this out recently. Before the pandemic began, the scientific consensus was that lockdowns and quarantines don't work. They're a bad idea. You shouldn't do them. But then China pushed the message that we've handled COVID so well and we did lockdowns. You guys, everyone should do it. And that got kind of echoed down the line, in particular by Imperial College London, a study by Neil Ferguson, who has been wrong about previous epidemic diseases like swine flu and whatnot. He came up with what data scientists admit is a horribly buggy, screwed up modeling system that predicted
20 million deaths or something. It was really that was the most extreme thing that scared a lot of governments. Right?
Yeah. And it was wildly wrong. And it turns out Imperial College London is getting a lot of money from China.
I mean, we don't know that is why they would have done this.
No, we can't connect the dots. There are just these dots that are right there.
The problem is that everybody is getting money from China.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not...
Harvard, too.
Yeah, so it's not like we can definitely say that Imperial College London had a faulty, computer model because of Chinese funding. But
they just had a faulty computer model, period.
And have Chinese funding.
Yeah, those are two unrelated statements. But I think that's one of the things that, we do a lot of studies, the whole modern scientific, way of doing these. You do these studies. But the problem with these complex computer models is the quality of your results are dependent on a large number of assumptions you make, all being totally correct, right? And you can never get all of your assumptions correct. And so this is just a problem with modeling in general. And any data scientist or anyone who does modeling knows this, right? Like it's just hard to get all the inputs right. But the weird thing is that you put a dozen or 24 different inputs in, and you get one input out, which is the number of projected deaths in this case. And people believe that without questioning how the model was set up. So, why weren't there questions about that? Why weren't there questions about how the model was created? Not just what does the model say?
Because we're busy panicking in the middle of an unknown disease spreading around the world.
That's a good point. No, you're right. We should have been busy panicking, and we were.
I mean, I'm just saying that's kind of what happened, I think.
Yeah.
That governments were under a lot of pressure to do something.
Yeah, and we were hoarding toilet paper and spraying down our groceries.
The spraying down the grocery was later. I don't think we had even started hoarding toilet paper yet.
Well, I guess this depends on when we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this was February of 2020.
Do something.
Yeah, I remember having conversations with people about hey, at the beginning, hey, I think I've heard about this disease coming from China. And just the progression of it's probably, not going to be that bad, just to, it might be kind of bad. We might be heading for something not so great.
Other people or you talking to people?
I remember talking to people about that. Because I'm a relentless optimist.
I definitely remember talking with people I was working with at the time and being okay, well, I think we're going to be out probably a little longer than 2 weeks.
Hey, aren't we almost to the 2-year anniversary of 2 weeks to slow the spread?
Yeah, 15 days to slow the spread. But
Yeah.
it's, like
Flatten the curve,
1,500,
yeah.
2 weeks to slow the spread, 15 days to flatten the curve. And, like 700 days later, we're doing okay. We're not doing okay.
It's good you can admit that.
Yeah.
But hey, let's get back to the Olympics. I think the other interesting controversy that's come out of the Olympics is sort of the idea of these American-born athletes competing for China and the scrutiny they're getting.
Yeah, it's interesting because the conversation is very different depending on whether you're in America or China. Somebody was saying on Twitter that in America, the conversation becomes about race, essentially.
Mhm.
And in China, the conversation is about class and privilege.
Explain that.
Well, because the person who's been the most under scrutiny is probably Eileen Gu, right? She's a Chinese American skier who won the gold medal at the Big Air event, which was the one that was in the dystopian looking industrial park. And, she had been competing for the USA in events, and then in 2019 decided to switch and compete for Team China instead. Shortly after going to Beijing and meeting Xi Jinping and being in a big photo op with a bunch of, Chinese future Olympic athletes.
Yeah, it's
right?
crazy that she was next to Xi Jinping, basically.
Yeah, so Eileen Gu, she's getting a lot of attention partly because she's at the top of her game. She's at the top of obviously winning a gold in the Olympics, but also she is biracial Chinese American and has, done things like called China her homeland and said how proud she was for, skiing for them. And there's talk about whether she had to give up her American citizenship to do it or not.
Yeah, because China does not recognize dual citizenship. And so what does it mean when American-born athletes are competing for China? Did they have to give up their citizenship? It's a question they're really trying hard not to answer.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of being portrayed as, well, like, why are you in the U.S. There's some defensiveness from Asian Americans saying, like, are you giving people a loyalty test because they're Asian, right? Like, because we're not seen as real Americans, so now you're saying, like, we have to do something or other.
Well, because this is in the context of there are white Americans who are competing for China.
There are also Chinese Americans who are competing for America, like Nathan Chen, who won gold in the men's figure skating. He's Chinese American and won gold for America. So, like, there's...
Well, that seems different.
Well, I think because that's the more normal way to do it, right? In terms of, like, oh, well, you're Chinese American, you're competing for America.
Well, you're talking about an American citizen competing for America. That's not strange.